The 21st century has witnessed a renewed scramble for Africa, this time not for land or colonies, as was the case during the colonial era, but for influence and resources that are crucial in the modern global economy. The United States and China, the world's two largest economies, are at the forefront of this new competition, finding themselves locked in a geopolitical dance, with Africa as the dance floor, a stage where their ambitions play out. This competition, fueled by economic interests and strategic ambitions, has significant implications for the continent and its people, affecting their daily lives and future prospects. South Africa, with its wealth of resources, stable democracy, and strategic location, finds itself at the heart of this contest, a focal point for both American and Chinese interests, courted by both sides but also wary of the potential pitfalls of this great power rivalry. The stakes are high. The U.S., long a dominant player on the continent, is now grappling with China's meteoric rise and its growing footprint in Africa. China, hungry for resources to fuel its economic engine and seeking to expand its global influence, sees Africa as a land of opportunity, a place where it can secure vital resources and establish strategic partnerships. This vision drives China's investments in infrastructure, mining, and other key sectors across the continent. Sees Africa as a land of opportunity. This competition, while presenting challenges, also offers opportunities for African nations who can leverage their position to negotiate better deals and secure their own development priorities. By playing their cards right, African countries can attract investments that spur economic growth and improve living standards. However, navigating this complex geopolitical landscape requires a delicate balancing act, ensuring that Africa's interests remain paramount. Leaders must be vigilant, making sure that the benefits of foreign investments are equitably distributed and that their sovereignty is not compromised. The trade war between the U.S. and China, a clash of titans in the global economy, has sent shockwaves across the world, and Africa is no exception. This trade war, characterized by tit-for-tat tariffs and accusations of unfair trade practices, has disrupted global supply chains and created uncertainty in the global market. African economies, many of which rely heavily on trade with both the U.S. and China, have felt the impact of this economic conflict. The U.S., under the Trump administration, imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, prompting retaliatory tariffs from China. This escalation of trade tensions has led to increased costs for businesses and consumers alike, impacting global trade flows. While some African countries have benefited from the trade diversions caused by the trade war, others have seen their exports decline, impacting economic growth and livelihoods. The trade war underscores the vulnerability of African economies to external shocks and the need for greater economic diversification and regional integration. Beneath South Africa's breathtaking landscapes lies a treasure trove of minerals, including some of the world's most sought-after resources, rare earth elements. These elements, crucial for a range of technologies from smartphones and electric vehicles to defense systems and renewable energy, have become a focal point in the U.S.-China rivalry. South Africa, with its vast reserves of these critical minerals, finds itself at the center of this strategic competition. China, having established a dominant position in the rare earth industry, has used its control over these resources as a geopolitical lever. This has raised concerns in the U.S. and other Western countries, prompting them to seek alternative sources of supply. South Africa, with its potential to become a major player in the rare earth market, is seen as a key partner in reducing reliance on China. However, developing a competitive rare earth industry requires significant investment and technological expertise, presenting both opportunities and challenges for South Africa. China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure development project spanning continents, has made significant inroads into Africa, including South Africa. The BRI, with its promise of roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure projects, has been welcomed by many African nations eager for development and investment. However, concerns have also been raised about the potential for debt traps, as some countries struggle to repay the loans incurred for these projects. China's investment in Africa has been substantial, with billions of dollars poured into infrastructure projects across the continent. This investment has undoubtedly contributed to economic growth and development in many African countries. However, critics argue that some BRI projects lack transparency and accountability, leading to concerns about corruption and environmental degradation. Furthermore, the sustainability of some of these projects, particularly in the face of changing economic conditions, has been questioned. Section 5. A helping hand or a stranglehold. Examining China's lending practices. China's lending practices in Africa have come under scrutiny, with many questioning the true intentions behind these financial engagements. Allegations of debt trap diplomacy have surfaced, suggesting that these loans are not just financial aid, but strategic tools. Critics argue that loans are used as leverage to extract concessions from borrowing countries, or to gain control of strategic assets such as ports, railways, and other critical infrastructure. While China maintains that its lending is purely economic and mutually beneficial, aimed at fostering development and growth, concerns persist about the transparency and sustainability of these loans. Many fear that the lack of clear terms and conditions could lead to unforeseen consequences. Some African countries, burdened by high debt levels, find themselves in precarious positions, having been forced to cede control of key infrastructure projects to Chinese companies. This raises significant concerns about sovereignty and the long-term economic implications for these nations. The case of Sri Lanka's Hambantota port is often cited as a cautionary tale. The port was leased to a Chinese company for 99 years after Sri Lanka struggled to repay its debt, highlighting the potential risks and consequences of such financial arrangements. This situation has been a wake-up call for many countries, urging them to reconsider their financial strategies and partnerships. The potential risks of Chinese lending are now more apparent than ever. However, China argues that its lending practices are no different from those of other countries, and that it is committed to working with African countries to ensure the sustainability of its projects. China emphasizes that its goal is to foster development and economic growth in the regions it invests in, and to build long-term partnerships that are beneficial for both parties. Nevertheless, the issue of debt sustainability and the potential for debt traps remains a sensitive issue in China-Africa relations. As these relationships continue to evolve, the world watches closely, weighing the benefits against the potential risks. Section 6. The U.S. seeks a foothold, countering China's influence. The U.S., witnessing China's growing influence in Africa, has sought to reassert its presence on the continent. However, its approach has been more cautious and less resource-intensive than China's. The U.S. has focused on promoting democracy, good governance, and trade, while also providing development assistance and security cooperation. However, the U.S. has struggled to match the scale of Chinese investment in Africa, and its engagement has often been overshadowed by its focus on counterterrorism and security concerns. The U.S. has also criticized China's lending practices in Africa, accusing it of saddling African countries with unsustainable debt. The U.S. has promoted its own development finance institutions, such as the Development Finance Corporation, as an alternative to Chinese lending. However, the U.S. faces an uphill battle in countering China's influence in Africa, particularly given its own history of interventionism and the perception that it has taken Africa for granted. Section 7. A controversial offer. The U.S. refugee policy and South Africa. In a move that strained U.S.-South Africa relations, the Trump administration offered to resettle white South Africans, claiming they faced genocide in their home country. This controversial policy, widely condemned as racist and historically inaccurate, sparked outrage in South Africa and internationally. The South African government vehemently denied the allegations of persecution, accusing the Trump administration of trying to sow racial divisions and undermine its sovereignty. The offer to resettle white South Africans was seen by many as a cynical attempt to appeal to Trump's base and pander to white nationalist sentiments. The policy was also criticized for its hypocrisy, given the Trump administration's own harsh policies towards refugees and asylum seekers from other parts of the world. The controversy surrounding the refugee policy further damaged U.S.-South Africa relations, which were already strained by differences over trade and China policy. Section 8. AfCFTA, Africa's bold move towards economic independence. In a historic move towards greater economic integration, African nations launched the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA. This ambitious trade agreement, once fully implemented, aims to create the world's largest free trade area by connecting 1.3 billion people across 55 countries. AfCFTA has the potential to boost intra-African trade, attract foreign investment, and create jobs, ultimately reducing Africa's reliance on foreign powers. The AfCFTA seeks to dismantle trade barriers, reduce tariffs, and facilitate the movement of goods and services across borders. By creating a single market, the agreement aims to promote industrialization, diversify economies, and enhance Africa's competitiveness in the global market. The success of AfCFTA will depend on the political will of African leaders to implement the agreement and address challenges such as infrastructure gaps, non-tariff barriers, and capacity constraints. Section 9. Charting a new course. Navigating great power politics in the 21st century. As the U.S. and China vie for influence in Africa, African nations find themselves at a crossroads. The continent is increasingly becoming a battleground for geopolitical influence, with both superpowers seeking to expand their reach and secure strategic advantages. The continent is no longer content to be a passive player in the global arena, but is determined to chart its own course and pursue its own development priorities. African leaders are actively engaging in diplomatic efforts, forging new alliances, and exploring innovative economic partnerships. The rivalry between the US and China, while presenting challenges, also offers opportunities for African nations to leverage their strategic importance and negotiate better deals for themselves. By carefully balancing their relationships with these global powers, African countries can extract significant benefits, such as improved infrastructure, technology transfer, and increased trade. The key for Africa lies in pursuing a pragmatic and balanced approach, engaging with both the US and China, while safeguarding its own interests. This requires a nuanced understanding of the geopolitical landscape and a commitment to maintaining sovereignty and independence. African nations must prioritize good governance, transparency, and accountability to ensure that foreign investment benefits their people. Strengthening democratic institutions and promoting the rule of law are essential steps in this process. By promoting regional integration, strengthening institutions, and investing in human capital, Africa can position itself to navigate the complexities of great power politics and secure a brighter future for its people. Education and skill development will be crucial in empowering the next generation of African leaders to take on these challenges